How's it going? My name is Danny Thacker, and this is the Where Are We podcast. It's been a long time since I recorded my last episode, so I'm sorry for procrastinating so long, but as a creator, sometimes you run into a brick wall where you don't know what to say next. Sometimes you think, well, I've got to say it perfect. But sometimes saying nothing at all gets you nowhere. So that's why I decided today that I'm just going to throw something down because some people want to hear from me, right? A funny thought that I always had, because I've worked in the service industry, is that people make a mess everywhere they go, but you have to think about, do they make that kind of mess at home? Because who would let them get away with that? Honestly, have you ever gone over to anyone's house and seen napkins and crumbs and ketchup and mustard smeared all over their table? Well, maybe for some people, but I don't think most would get away with that. But yet, when you are a service worker, when you work in the restaurant industry or when you work in a retail store, you see this happen all the time. And you're like, why are people animals? You go into the restroom and you see shreds of toilet paper all over the floor like a cat just went in there and started unraveling the roll with its claws and shredding toilet paper to bits all over the place. Nobody could get away with that shit at home. Why are they doing it out in public? Do they have concern for their fellow man? I mean, it's like, I understand you have kids and kids are messy, but the kids are your responsibility. So clean up after them. Seriously. I want to start off this episode by thanking Dave Ryan. Something really neat happened. My partner Natron went out to Rayton, Colorado. I'm probably not pronouncing that right at all. However, I'll say it. Rayton, Colorado. And he wrote on a guardrail at Where Are We Show. And Dave Ryan went on our Twitter at Where Are We Show. And he said, I saw this in Rayton, Colorado, and I thought it was pretty neat. And I said, well, thank you very much, sir, for noticing. So I'm going to jump into the next thing. Of course, we know we have a crazy president, right? Just recently, he tried to pass the new health care, or the American Health Care Act, I believe it's called, to replace Obamacare. Now, this is the guy who during his campaign said, Obamacare is a complete disaster. Let me just take the basic idea now and cut a bunch of shit from it. That's basically what happened with what Trump did with the American Health Care Act. And you feel sorry for old people with all of the cuts that he's made. He's making cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. Instead of receiving health care like you need at an older age, you're going to now get a voucher that's not going to cover nearly all of your health care expenses. Can you imagine receiving a check when you have cancer and somebody saying, here you go, good luck? Well, needless to say, Trump's proposed health care plan did not pass. Paul Ryan got really pissed and drove away in his car playing Papa Roach's Last Resort, according to reports. I don't know if that's true or not, but you can just imagine him, cut my life into pieces. I think Papa Roach responded on Twitter by saying, oh man, our song's being played in such a situation by such an idiot, or something along those lines. You know, it's funny that we have gotten a little over 2 months into his presidency, and all he can do is blame other people for problems that have occurred during his time in office. I could go on and on about this, but a lot of people don't like to talk about politics simply because it makes them uncomfortable. Well, I think politics are a great thing to talk about because we have to think about our future, because we have to think about where we're going. That's why the show is called Where Are We? It's about history. It's about science. It's about telling people the path to making a brighter future. So Trump blames everyone else for his problems. Oh, the healthcare industry is now going to collapse because you didn't repeal Obamacare and go with this plan that was presented by my administration. Which, again, like I said, is something that he said was awful in the first place, and then he basically proposed a similar idea. All of these campaign promises he made, he said everything was going to be great, everything's going to be wonderful, it's going to be fantastic, I'm going to hold up my hand and make a funny gesture with everything I say, using the words wonderful, fantastic, awesome, it's going to be incredible. But I never gave any details during my campaign of what I meant by that. But people ate it up. We've got a businessman going on into office. We've got a man who tells it like it is. Well, we've got a man that has no idea what he's doing, obviously. Trump's proposed budget that he put out before his healthcare plan failed was also a disaster. He's cutting a lot of social aid programs, and I can tell you this right now, while a big common misconception in America may be, I'm working hard for my money, I'm being taxed, I'm paying for people that I shouldn't be paying for. That's not necessarily true, because if you look at social programs and the amount of the budget that they take up, it's not even a drop in the bucket. I mean, food stamps, PBS, all of these things that benefit people, many of whom need help. People like to cut them down. They like to call them lazy. They like to call them people who don't work, people living off the system. But that's not necessarily the truth. And a lot of things are being cut, especially from older folks. The HUD housing program's been cut. The State Department's been cut. Agriculture's been cut. A lot of health and human services. The education system has been cut. Don't even get me started on that. How can you hire someone that has no education experience to be your education leader in the country? Betsy DeVos being the education leader is just
wrong.
A disaster, in my opinion. He's cut housing and urban development. He's cut NASA. Luckily, one of the things that he has proposed is that finally we are going to be sending people to Mars. And that's exciting. It's awesome to see people going back out in space. But there is not enough money being put towards science. There's not enough money being put toward the people of this nation. But this administration is about the businessman. It's about getting the people who already have money more money. And to me, they already have enough. Something needs to be regulated in an economy where the top 1% controls about half of the total wealth in the nation. That's just crazy. And we live in the richest country in the world, yet nobody can afford to live. Trump's also proposing the infamous wall on Mexico.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Yeah. Mark my words.
Yeah. And he has proposed $314 million to hire 1,500 employees for immigration enforcement and border patrol on the Mexican border. Plus, he's requesting $2.6 billion from the 2018 budget, some of which taxpayers may be putting in money for, when he promised during his campaign that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. We all knew that wasn't going to happen. Mexico's former president and their current president have both highly disagreed with this order that Trump has proposed. They said, this is crazy, basically. So, we're going forward with it. Apparently, Trump has somewhere around the neighborhood of $4 billion to fund paying for a wall that's going to cost somewhere around $22 billion to build. It's expected to be 30 feet tall. And the thing that I think of is, in the history of the world, a wall has never worked to keep people out of the country. Motherfuckers be jumping over the wall. I mean, in China, the Great Wall of China did not keep out the Mongolians. The Mongolians went over, around, broke down the wall. They got in there. It didn't stop them. Walls don't work. When you think about illegal immigrants, we know that most of what are called illegal immigrants in the United States have got into the United States on visas. And they let them expire, and then they stayed here. It costs a lot to be an American citizen. I don't have an exact number on that figure. Of that 11 million figure of illegal immigrants, you can figure at least a third of that is children that they've had while they were in this country. So what do we do now? These are tax-paying citizens. These are now families. What are you going to do? Break them up? Move them out? Are they really causing that big of a problem? Are they really stealing our jobs? I think it's something like 1% of the jobs in the United States are held by illegal immigrants. 1%? Is that an enormous problem when somewhere around 16% of the U.S. are Hispanic? Somewhere around, I think it's like 13 or 14% are African American. I think 66 or 67% of the U.S. is white people. But yet, we are terrified that they're going to somehow take over and we're going to lose everything we have. Who do you know that's lost their job to an illegal immigrant? I could go on and on. Anyway, this wall's supposed to be 30 feet tall. Did you know that they make ladders that are 32 feet tall? Did you know that they make airplanes? Did you know that people who are getting into the country illegally are dying trying? They're going through the desert into California. They're not going over the wall. There's security there. What we have and what we are doing as far as vetting people is working just fine. Nothing is perfect. You're never going to get anything that is perfect. But mathematically and statistically, what we are doing is just fine. So go to HomeDepot.com. You can buy a 32-foot ladder if that wall gets up. And I encourage as many illegal immigrants as possible just to climb right over the thing. Enough about politics. My wife always says, please don't talk about politics. You're going to turn people away. You're going to make them upset, and they're not going to want to listen to you because you are not an established person on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. Doesn't matter what side you're on. People say there's a lot of fake news going around right now. Well, of course there is. Everybody has an agenda. It doesn't matter which network you're watching. They all have a target audience. That's what marketing is all about. So they're going to say the things that the people that are watching these networks want to hear. Of course. Wouldn't you? That's what the people who are paying for your channel to be on the air, your advertisers, want. They want people to buy their products. So it's kind of a tough game you play whenever you're in the news industry. I know that everybody has an agenda, like I said. So who can you trust? Well, vet your information, folks. Check a few different sources. I particularly like NPR and BBC, I feel, are two news sources that don't necessarily try to lean too far left or too far right, which is a good thing. You're listening to Where Are We Podcast. Well, I'm going to get away from politics in general right now, and I'm going to move on to space because science is something that is a little bit harder to disagree with, although some people still do, because science is often proven. Now, just like there's a lot of fake news out there right now, people also are noticing that there's a lot of science that is being put out that they would consider not necessarily true. And I can't say that they're wrong, because science is something that has a method. And it takes a lot of time to present factual information. A lot of studies need to be carried out so that you can rule out every single possibility. When we're talking about the gravitational waves that were recently discovered, people are sitting in an office in an office chair detecting gravitational waves, hearing noises coming from outer space that come from two black holes colliding together. And they simply hear a little bloop. Well, they did everything to determine that this was a gravitational wave from or down to the point of making sure that their chairs weren't making any noise. That's how detailed you have to get with a scientific investigation. Now, just like the news, science has to put something out there for the people who love reading about science. So sometimes things get put out too early. Is it healthy to drink milk? Is it not healthy to drink milk? Well, I'm sure there are pros and cons of either. And you can do too much or you can do too little when it comes to drinking milk. So you have to be very careful. And you have to realize that if you are a consumer of science, they're going to put articles out there for you to read. They want your attention. They want their sponsors to make money, and they want to make money, and they want attention, and they want to have fun. That's what it's all about. Everybody has an agenda. So, with that being said, have you ever wondered how Uranus got its name? Uranus. I picture two astronomers looking through a telescope and spotting Uranus whenever they first saw it. And they're like, what the hell is that? And one guy says to the other, it's Uranus. That was the worst joke ever. It would have been better if I used the Beavis and Butthead laugh. I can't even do that very well. But actually, the name Uranus came from the father of Kronos in Greek mythology. That's it. It's not a but. Scientists actually still haven't decided what a planet is. Everybody gets all up in arms whenever you talk about Pluto. Is Pluto a planet? Is Pluto not a planet?
Nine.
Well, we're still not sure. We're still not sure exactly what a planet is. But there is this organization called the International Astronomical Union that has apparently the authority on determining what a planet is. But there still really isn't a clear definition of what a planet is, like I said. This is the group that said Pluto was no longer a planet and was just part of the Kuiper Belt. Kuiper Belt is a bunch of objects that exist beyond Neptune, currently the last planet or eighth planet in our solar system. Eris is also a Kuiper Belt object. Now keep this in mind. You have Pluto and Eris in the Kuiper Belt, right? These are what we now consider to be dwarf planets. Well, did you know that Eris is actually slightly larger than Pluto? So why wasn't Eris ever a planet over Pluto? Well, I guess we just happened to see Pluto first. So there you go. We've learned a lot about planets and space since we lost Pluto as a planet. But the debate on whether Pluto is a planet or not is still ongoing, and they're now proposing a new definition that could mean that there would be as many as 110 planets in our solar system. 110 planets! That's way too many. Could you imagine trying to use a mnemonical device to come up with, to try and name those 110 planets? Shit, 8 or 9 is enough when you're in school, when you have to memorize. There was something about a baseball field. I can't remember what we used to name the 9 planets back when I was in school. Or what they use now. I mean, it's easy to name them, but can you imagine 110 in our solar system? So according to the recent definition, a planet is a substellar mass body that has never undergone nuclear fusion and that has enough gravitation to be round due to hydrostatic equilibrium regardless of its orbital parameters. So it has enough gravitational pull to be round. If you imagine that you're outside during the winter and it has snowed, and you take your hands and you reach down on the ground and you pick up some snow and you make yourself a snowball. You can imagine a planet in the same way. A planet forms when there is enough gravity to form a round object. Basically, your hands are kind of like gravity in this situation, where you're pressing together that snowball into a round object. With a planet, that's just the shape that nature forms. It's just like a bubble. That is the most compact and most efficient thing that nature can do with those elements. When you blow a bubble, it's always round. Nature tries to conserve space. If something has enough mass, it will become round. And that's really the best explanation I can give, because I do a science show, even though I'm not a scientist. But I constantly read about this stuff, and I am very interested in it. So I appreciate you listening. Now let's jump to something else. Has anybody ever heard of the putting your wiener in a popcorn bucket at the movie theater? I'm sure we've all heard about that trick, but exactly how does that go down? Has anybody ever wondered how that happens? I mean, they say, okay, cut a hole in the bottom of the popcorn bucket. But how do you get by with all the popcorn not falling out? Do you keep your hand on the bottom of it? Do you take the popcorn to the bathroom and cut a hole in it? Because that would be kind of strange. Or, during the movie, do you fiddle with the popcorn and you start cutting out a hole and hold your hand on the bottom while you then take the popcorn bucket and rest it against your leg, unbutton your pants, unzip your zipper, pull out your cock, stick it in the hole? I always feel really uncomfortable when I say cock, honestly. I don't feel like that's FCC appropriate, but this show also isn't FCC appropriate. Anyway, I just always wondered, has anybody ever really done that, or is that just an idea? On top of that, you've got this hot butter substance in there, and popcorn, which isn't necessarily the softest thing in the world. You know, those sharp little corners on the kernels, and just doesn't seem comfortable. Plus, if the popcorn is a full bucket and you're eating popcorn together, would you, number one, want to eat out of that bucket? And number two, when is she going to eat enough popcorn out of the extra large bucket to reach down to the tip of your penis? What are you going to do? Say, eat some more popcorn, damn it. And then she's going to be like, no, I don't think I'm hungry anymore. What's going on? Are you okay? I can eat popcorn when I want to. Also, another thought. You look at seashells used as decorations in a bathroom or hanging up on the wall. What if every shelled creature roamed the shores, eating people and keeping their skeletons for decoration? Like those shells in the bathroom that you have. I saw like a bunch of shells tied together on a rope hanging up neatly on a wall. What if snails did that? Snails are like, I need to go out and collect some humans. I need to eat some human skins and keep their skeletons and hang them up. Put them in my restaurant. It'll look really cool. It'll be called Skull and Bones Restaurant. We'll have a commercial on television. Anybody ever see those as seen on TV commercials? I saw a cup on TV the other day that they put a blowtorch to. This is like one of those coffee mugs that you can take with you in the car that you put the lid on. Who the hell needs to put a blowtorch to their coffee cup? But this amazing device, this coffee cup, kept the drink cold inside. None of the ice melted while they were blowtorching the outside of the cup. I said, that's wonderful, but when do I ever need to expose my cup to fire? And if I'm not a total idiot, I'm not going to leave it out in the car in the hot summer sun. I'm probably just going to take it in with me inside the store or wherever I go, or drink it before I go inside. Why do I need to worry about it melting? I mean, just put some ice in there and drink it. I mean, if I'm drinking coffee and I want it to stay hot, I usually drink my coffee before I go into work because I can't survive an entire day of work if I don't drink the coffee. It just, all these infomercials seem useless. You talk about a hose that's made of steel that doesn't tangle, and they show dogs chewing on it. Like, why are you letting your dog chew on the hose? Why are you keeping your hose outside in a snowstorm or letting it freeze and then reheat to where it cracks under the weather? It's not like they're tires on your car and you have to take them off and put them back on. You can take the hose and put it in the garage. All these devices, because people are simply irresponsible. So the infomercials put them on TV and they're like, look at this, it makes it way easier. And then they show some dramatic situation where people can't figure out how to use anything. Somebody puts butter on bread and it's like they're stabbing the bread with a knife constantly. It's like, that's not how it works. Be a little more gentle. You can put butter on a soft piece of bread. We're sending people to the moon. We figured out how to use antibiotics. We know how to do surgery with robots. You can't put butter on a piece of bread without tearing it to shreds. We're not cavemen anymore. You don't need these fancy as seen on TV pieces of junk. Well, let's call that the end of this episode. I want to thank you very much for listening. You can always check out my videos on youtube.com/wherearewee. Also visit me on Twitter and send me a message. It's @WhereAreWeShow on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Catch you next time. I'm Danny Thacker. Peace.